Welcome back to New Rockstars, I'm Erik Voss, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe has finally begun to answer one critical multiversal question for Phase 4. Why do some variants across timelines and universes look different, played by different actors, like Peter Parker across the Spider-Verse or Loki further and further away from the sacred timeline, while others look like themselves, played by the same actor, like Doctor Strange, Wanda Maximoff, and, well, yeah, I guess Loki in the timeline where he's president.
Which one of us are you?
Well, according to Marvel producer Richie Palmer, the answer has less to do with any one ironclad rule for the Marvel multiverse, and is more centered on the specific nature of these categories of characters. While characters like the Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange are more constant, fixed beings whose universes revolve around them, characters like Loki and Peter Parker are scrappier, more mischievous agents of chaos who were always meant to have Schrödinger-esque diversity within their spectrums.
Do animals talk in this dimension? Because I don't want to freak them out.
This is especially fascinating to explore when one looks back at the history of how Marvel head Kevin Feige secured the rights to share Peter Parker in this universe back in the spring of 2014. A kind of nexus moment in our timeline, in which Feige not only launched a new incarnation of Peter Parker, but implicitly scored a stake in every Peter Parker who preceded him, all of them webbed together in one sticky package deal. The fine print written in Doctor Strange Eldritch runes that only Feige could see. So in this episode of our miniseries, Feige's Plan, let's discuss why Peter Parker is destined to be part of a Spider-Verse family, and how back in 1 week in spring 2014, Marvel Studios scored the biggest win ever.
Yes!
So after the re-release of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness on streaming, producer Richie Palmer spoke to Empire and explained why variant Doctor Stranges and variant Wanda Maximoffs are played by the same actor, while the Lokis and the Spider-Men are played by different actors. Palmer said that he and the writer of Loki and Multiverse of Madness, Michael Waldron, discussed at length the story logic behind this, and that Loki, as an inherently chaotic being, would take a variety of forms, and that the closer to the sacred timeline, the more like Tom Hiddleston Loki looks, but the further away from 616, the more variants look different. He also said that when it comes to Peter Parker, the tradition of alternate Spider-Man began in the early 2000s, and that Spider-Man should cast a wide net across the multiverse to have Peters who look different and totally different people who are Spider-Man in those alternate universes. Now, the truth, of course, is that there really is no rule. Even with Loki, some variants are played by different actors, some are doubled up by Tom Hiddleston himself. The primary factors that govern whether a character's variant is played by themselves or by someone else are really the narrative needs of that particular title and the commercial needs of the studio. Which brings us to how Peter Parker first landed in this MCU.
Hey everyone.
We all saw the news in late 2014 and 2015, the leaked Sony emails about the behind-the-scenes drama with the Spider-Man franchise during the era of Mark Webb and Andrew Garfield, and the surprise deal worked out between Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal to share the character in a new rebooted form existing in the MCU, leading to Tom Holland as Peter in Captain America Civil War in 2016. However, years later, in fall 2021, it finally came out in a book from the writers Tara Bennett and Paul Terry called The Story of Marvel Studios, The Making of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which revealed that in the spring of 2014, 2 days before Kevin Feige had a get-together with Amy Pascal, Feige secretly scrambled together an impromptu mini retreat in a rented hotel suite in Santa Monica, an all-hands-on-deck with the Marvel core creative producers to assemble a battle plan. The goal? To score Peter Parker for the MCU. At this secret summit, the Marvel team agreed upon a few things about their pitch for the character. First off, they would not be continuing Andrew Garfield's version of the character, despite Andrew Garfield being a beloved star. They wanted to start fresh. They wanted to keep Peter Parker in high school so that he could continue the day-to-day events of school life like school trips and homework and homecoming dances. So Pascal had invited Feige into a meeting in order to ask for his advice for the next Spider-Man movie, because Feige did at that point and still does offer advice on Marvel titles produced at other studios. But after this secret meeting, he then walked into this meeting with Amy Pascal, and instead of just offering her some advice, he went into this pitch to completely co-produce Spider-Man with Sony. And Pascal said that she started crying and threw a sandwich at Kevin Feige and threw him out of the office. The New York Times even followed up with Feige and Pascal about this incident when Spider-Man No Way Home was coming out last December, and the two of them confirmed that this did happen, but they laughed it off. And they said that there was a second meeting at Pascal's home where Feige pitched her specifically, what if Tony Stark makes Peter's suit? And that image of a Spider-Man set in the MCU's more modern technology world just felt fresh to Pascal, so she said yes. And let's take a step back to remember some history here. 2014 was the most important year for Marvel Studios.
I respectfully disagree.
I guess, like, other than 2008, when it all started.
What are you talking about?
And you can make an argument for 2018. Black Panther and Infinity War were pretty important for them to get right.
What is this guy's problem? Is start.
But I still think 2014 was the nexus moment. Because remember, this was the year after their shaky start to phase 2. 2014 saw the releases of 2 of Marvel's best films to date. Captain America the Winter Soldier, which proved the Russo brothers and Marcus McFeely could shepherd this franchise with darker themes, those 4 being the same team to produce Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. 2014, of course, also saw the release of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is even more surprising because it proved lesser known B players could be just as successful in the MCU with the right cocktail of casting, music, and humor.
That's a fake laugh.
It's real.
2 huge wins for Marvel Studios. And this same year, Sony's Spider-Man franchise really ran out of gas. So 2014 was a nexus moment in which Marvel was able to secure its future while Sony needed a reset. And by the end of that year, Kevin Feige bullishly announced his entire Phase 3 plan, which would culminate in a 2-part Infinity War crossover event. So by doing so, he made Marvel Studios inevitable. And so as this inevitable man with a plan, Kevin Feige was perfectly positioned to take all the BLTs thrown at him and yet still be able to walk back into the room with an offer no one could refuse. And really the smartest aspect of the Spider-Man plan was to recast Peter Parker as Tom Holland. Not because Tom Holland was great in the role and not because it replaced Andrew Garfield in fans' minds, but really because it left in the wings for Tom Holland 2 brothers for this new Peter Parker to inevitably meet one day.
Thank you.
Marvel Studios knew that as much as we loved Tom Holland in this role, there were always going to be fans still attached to Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's versions of the characters. The true Peter Parker would always be a role cohabitated by 3 different people, a need and a longing that we would always have and pray for one day that Marvel Studios would be able to pay off on. And they knew that that would always be their plan. So by bringing in a 3rd Peter Parker and delaying all of his origins, like we never heard with great power until far later, Marvel Studios set up an organic rule of 3's formula of fan speculation so that anytime we saw Spider-Man and the number 3 together in a sentence over several years, we lost our collective minds.
Oh my God!
Here were 3 living working actors, all best known for playing Spider-Man, a character famous from the early 2000s as a character destined to team up with this variant, in a universe now on the cusp of multiversal incursions. So really this way, it's better for Peter Parker to exist in a multiverse where his variants are played by other actors because it provided to us a closure that we instinctively craved since Tom Holland took over this role from Andrew Garfield and since Andrew Garfield took over the role from Tobey Maguire. They created an imbalance to the order so that they could restore the balance. And of course, this is what fans who read the Spider-Verse comics in the early 2000s knew was possible. So by detaching Peter Parker from any one actor, and by doing the same with Loki, this gives Marvel Studios a path to recast any of their names by virtue of their chaotic nature or their proclivity for bridge building. Therefore, individuals like Captain America, Tony Stark, Reed Richards, T'Challa, there is now a multiverse of variants out there with different faces, who, thanks to how Marvel Studios introduced the Lokis and the Peters, now have a path forward that fans will be okay with. Thanks for watching this episode of Feige's Plan. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss. Follow Rockstars. Subscribe to Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Bye.